Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1012 of our daily content grind, and now that the new season is out and a few days have gone by, I think it's fair game to get into reviewing the second season of Transformers Earthspark the same way we were before, 2 episodes at a time, which means this will be like a sporadic thing I'll drop in every now and then, just until I've got every episode talked about once more, and then we get to wait 4 or 5 months for another chunk of episodes. Now, we know that there is a lot of turmoil with Earthspark as a franchise and as a show and a toy line, and just everything with Earthspark is kind of a mess right now. And I understand this video is not going to get nearly as many views as if I, say just like railed on a bunch of bad toys or whatnot. But you know what? I still really like the show. I still like what it does. I think a lot of people have not given it a fair chance. So we're going to talk about it anyway because, hey, I like it. So we're going to go with it. There are going to be some critiques in this one, though, because there are some things to talk about. But before that, I guess we should actually get going, and that is going to start with episode 1 of season 2. That is Aftermath. We start with a time jump. Now, not much of a time jump, just enough to kind of clear the board, get everything in its new position, nothing terribly extreme here, but with the aftermath of season 1, kind of makes sense that you kind of give it a little bit of breathing room and see what you're going to be doing with it next. And then we immediately jump into a chase scene. Something I like, and this is not the first time the show has done it, but there really are a lack of good animated chase scenes in Transformers. We do get some decent ones in the live action movies because, of course, they prioritize showing the Transformers as vehicles rather than as robots, because stunt cars are cheaper than big complex CGI monsters. But we don't get it very often in Transformers, and it's nice to see one here. So yeah, we've got a highway chase. The Decepticons are chasing after Optimus Prime. This scene is, the scene's cool. As I said, we get to see something we don't normally get to see in animation, but it does immediately put me off. And admittedly, it's because of my own expectations, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. We'll get to that later. So what we really need to talk about here, what this whole scene is about, is kind of showing the glow up of Robbie and Mo. It's been a year, so of course they've done a little bit of literal glowing up, as you can see from the new cyber suits. They have mastered the powers from their cyber sleeves, so now they have these weird henshin designs. However, the big thing here is that Mo has grown considerably. She has hit a growth spurt between seasons. So you're not baby's not going into battle anymore. There's actually some believability to her combat. Speaking of, when I say that this is just the whole scene is designed to show a glow up for the kids, it's because not only have they figured out their powers to this extent, they've figured them out enough to actually be something of a threat to the Decepticons. Aside from their energy weapon abilities, they've learned how to use their cyber sleeves to increase their physical strength too. They basically pull a double rider kick on Skywarp and just literally kick her off the trailer. It's a pretty big change. They're legitimately in superhero mode at this point. They are basically Transformer, Iron Man, and Ironheart. If that makes sense. I feel like I'm making the correct association there. I feel like I'm making the correct comparison. But it's nice to see, because this is one of the very few times that the human characters have a reason for going into battle, because they do have the Quintus powers. And now they actually have a fighting chance, and that's something they rarely do. Usually they kind of just forget that. It's the Batman-Robin thing. You take the kid into battle and kind of forget that they're less trained and more squishy than you. Transformers does that a lot, but we're rectifying it here, which is a good thing. Now, if you're not following this show, what you're seeing there is a Yeah, it is basically what we'll call an Ember Shard. Yeah, it's a piece of the Emberstone that shattered at the end of last season, and it's a little bit chaotic now. So when this thing goes out of control and everyone loses track of it, we give birth to Aftermath, a brand new Terran, in this one described as a Chaos Terran. He's not independently alive like the other Earthbound Terrans. He actually has like a chamber in his chest that houses the shard of the Emberstone. So he requires that in order to stay alive. This is very Allspark Shard from Animated, if you haven't picked up on that by now. Aftermath plays the biggest role in this episode because obviously they are trying to establish him as the new character. He is villainous, he is more chaotic in action, he's very violent, very delinquent, and voiced by Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is not a casting call I would have ever expected. It's a weird voice. I will admit, I was expecting some big bruiser voice to kind of come out of him, because he does have this really mean, hulking design. He's the largest of the Terrans so far. He's just, I don't know, like, there's some of the voice is just too high-pitched. There is just not enough baritone in it for me to really, like, take it seriously. Like, as a punk kid, it kind of works, and I guess that's what they're going for here. I don't know, I was just expecting something a little bit meaner sounding. The character himself is fine. He is a radical departure from both the Decepticons and the Terrans, and it's a good way of establishing what exactly can happen when an evil Terran pops up. Or, you know, maybe evil's the wrong term, more self-serving. You know, they don't have the familial connection to the Maltos that the way the normal Terrans do. That was one of my concerns, is like, if Season 2 happens, they're going to have to create new Terrans. They're not all going to be connected. Like, you're not going to have, like, a dozen characters who all feel each other's emotions and thoughts at the same time, right? No. We fixed that here. So we find out what an evil Terran can be, basically. The funny part is, in the attempt to capture the shard, it's Breakdown that is really involved with it, and thus is the one who tries to take Aftermath under his wing. And when he tries to jump in the way to save Aftermath from an assault, he starts having weird flashbacks. He has flashbacks to things that happened 10 minutes ago in the episode, like the warm fuzzy montage, you know, where Breakdown just kind of sees him as like his surrogate son or whatever in this like really, really weird set of scenes with what you see here. It's funny. Aftermath has none of this, by the way. This is all in Breakdown's head. It's weird to see a different side of Breakdown, though. It's good to show a little bit more character to him, and then, yeah, this was just funny. We do have another plot. They pull the, like, when you're hunting down things like this in one of these shows, the first thing you think of is decoys, fake shards, in order to trick Decepticons. So they get that one out of the way immediately with the fight in this one, because the idea is to break up the Decepticons amongst multiple shard findings. So a few of the remaining heroes and the Terrans can go in and try and get these shards that the Decepticons have captured. Because if you see it, the Decepticons are on the winning end of this. They've got more shards than the Autobots do. So this was a kind of an attempt to recover some of that progress and try and get back on the winning side of this. So, it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well, and Aftermath just kind of being a new powerhouse and unpredictable is kind of what turns this around. There's a big emphasis here on family first, which is something that my family always goes by. Like, we've always been very much that way. So when they have to eventually admit, yeah, this is a losing effort, and they have to give up the shard, yeah, that's, I mean, it's interesting for them to absorb a loss in the first episode of the season. But it's more humbling, and it really does establish the status quo of the season. That said, I will admit, this is something of a disappointment. Because honestly, they were set up so well to do more interesting things in Season 2. Season 1 was all about the Decepticons all viewing the end of the war in different ways and integrating themselves onto Earth in different ways. Even Starscream. Starscream actually had a friend in Hashtag. They were genuinely nice to each other. Starscream actually found a nice side to him. We had Shockwave, who was willingly working with the Maltos in the final episodes. The Decepticons in general riding to the rescue when everything was about to go away. Like Mandroid. Why was I blanking on Mandroid's name? But after that, I was really curious what they would do if, like, rogue Decepticons would kind of menace them, if, Decepticons and Autobots would have to work together a little bit, and all that, and, like, but no, we have gone all the way back to Decepticons are just evil and looking for power, and Starscream wants the Ember Shards, the same way Starscreams of the past wanted Allspark Shards. We're back on shard hunting. We're back on evil Decepticons, and it really just feels like a return to status quo. If I didn't know better, I would almost say this was a course correction based on the reaction the series has been getting. Like, maybe we went too far with being different, go back to being familiar, or maybe but this has to be the plan all along, because they would have been writing this out while Season 1 was still airing. So this had to be the idea. They just wanted to start with something different for Season 1 and then move into familiar on Season 2. I don't necessarily think that's the right approach. I think the spirit of just trying new things got lost. And I don't like that. That isn't to say that they aren't doing new things, but this really just kind of feels like we went from something that could genuinely be the next Beast Wars as far as taking the stories in different directions and going straight back into G1, or actually animated style stories. Which, animated style stories aren't a bad thing. I'm just really sick of shard hunting. So that's mostly episode 1, though. Episode 1 is mostly establishing where everything is and sets us up for the rest of the season, which begins with episode 2, In Ruins. This is a Mo and Thrash episode, which is nice to see because Thrash really didn't get a whole lot of attention during season 1. Really glad that they're giving him a little bit more focus here, and that's going to be something that goes through the entire season, where we start to just spend a lot of time with individual characters who really didn't get as much of like an individual showing in the previous season. And now that they've been around for a year, now they're all a year old. So we can actually like get by all that, like they don't know how the world works and all that. They're all comfortable. They're all familiar now. So Mo and Thrash discover these ruins in Witwicky. And we're getting back to the whole mystery of Witwicky. You know, the whole reason why Ghost was planted there. The whole reason why the Autobots and Decepticons seem to congregate there, and why Cybertronian stuff seems to be popping up in this little sleepy town, right? There are secrets. There are mysteries. And they will continue to be touched on throughout the season. Throughout these 10 episodes, actually. We don't even need the rest of the season. But this is a huge one. Literally, it's gigantic. Like I said, good to see Mo and Thrash working together a lot on this one. Good to see them actually giving Thrash a little bit more screen time. And they do have a great relationship. They do a lot. They do work really, really well together. Definitely helps now that Mo is a little bit older. She seems to handle herself a lot better. She is now, actually, when Thrash is in vehicle mode, she's actually riding in the proper driver's seat and not in the sidecar. She's grown up that much. She gets to be in the big girl seat now. But it is good to see them together, and I'm glad they gave him an episode, because it really did feel like Robbie and Twitch were like the big deal in season 1. So this was nice. The ruins hold one of these. In Transformers, we've seen a lot of mysterious pods. The first thing in my head was Stasis Pod. Okay, so we can generate a brand new Transformer? Yes. Yes. No. This is a pod that is marked with the symbol of Quintus Prime. as a lot of this stuff is marked with Quintus Prime. And there is a very scrawny robot inside, one that follows them home, one that seems to refuse Energon, so not traditional Cybertronian, also refuses cave water, so not a Terran. That just kind of makes you question, well, now what? What is it now? It's all we know is that it's obsessed with Quintus, and it keeps reaching out for Mo. Turns out, it's a Quintesson executioner, or at least the glow-up that they have gotten for this particular series. You can't see a lot of the familiar design traits, like the long-hanging mouth plate, the spikes on the head, these almost like this crab-style pincers on them. Like there's familiar traits in there, so it's definitely based on the G1 Quintesson executioner, which is cool. It's cooler that we're actually getting into Quintesson stuff. I love Quintessons. They do not get used nearly enough, considering how important they were in the original cartoon fiction. This leads to essentially like a horror movie style run from the monster. As you can see, like there's a big chase scene through the cornfield. Alex, who's the Transformer nerd, of course, knows what a Quintesson executioner is. No explanation as to how he actually knows what one of these things are. I think what's fascinating about this is that, like, when I read through the listings of primes, and even as I watch this series, something in my head never made the connection between Quintus Prime and Quintessons. Like, I know the names start with the same 2 syllables, but I didn't put it together. I didn't put it together, like, how much Quintus might have been involved in the Quintessons. In this episode, they don't explain it. All we know is that this particular executioner just holds a very large grudge against Quintus, who, according to him, abandoned them. And that's really the only thing we get. That maybe Quintus might have done someone wrong. Maybe Quintus wasn't completely a nice guy. We're left to ponder on that. The big aspect of the episode is the fact that the only way they have of dealing with this thing is to get it back into its pod. Which requires them to lead it back to the ruins, and because of shenanigans, Alex and Thrash get locked out, and then it is literally just one-on-one, Executioner versus Mo. Remember, the kids have mastered their powers now. This is another way of showing it off, and it's actually a pretty good scene. There is a lot of just run, chasing, outmaneuvering, because Mo is the smaller of the two. But there is some decent fight scenes in it. It really does show Mo can handle herself now. She's not just like the helpless screaming kid anymore. She is actually a combatant. She actually knows what she's doing. You know? So it is successful. They do manage to get... she does manage to beat the Executioner, get him back in the pod. And then the pod lifts off. So this is like... one of the most competent a human has ever been in a Transformers episode. Like, she handled a major threat all by herself, and I'm using my kit in order to do that, and I'm basically being more clever than the Executioner to get rid of him. But what gets me is the setup. The Quintesson Executioner didn't... this thing didn't blow up once it hit orbit. It just left. That sets up so much. That sets up so much. The Quintesson Executioner that has a grudge against Quintus Prime is flying off somewhere, and he has the knowledge that what remains of Quintus is on Earth, and attached to 2 kids in Witwicky, Pennsylvania. That's going to lead to things. And if we get Quintessons in Season 2, if that's the big story arc of Season 2, I am going to be so happy. I am going to be so happy. But that's your rundown of the 2 episodes. So, honestly, pretty simple start to the season. It really did feel like early Season 1 style stuff, and that's going to be true of a lot of this season, especially when we get into the more silly, slapsticky kind of just for humor episodes. The filler stuff, you know. It's really just about establishing not only what the current status quo is on Earth, but also what the kids can now do that now that they have mastered their abilities with the cyber sleeves. It's a lot. It's a lot, but it also feels familiar. And that may or may not be a good thing for you. For me, I see some lost opportunities, but the writing in the show has been so good in Season 1, I'm willing to stick it out and see exactly what they do with it. So, that is Episode 1 and 2 of Season 2. As I said, I'll be dropping these in from time to time just so we can cover all the bases and eventually get the entire season reviewed. But until then, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.